So if you've been trading longer than them, you've then got defence on your case there. You can then look at revoking their trademark potentially, but it gets tricky because you'll need to demonstrate that your reputation in your name is substantially greater than theirs, even though they've got a trademark for it. Because you've been going longer, you'll need to be able to demonstrate that you've actually got more of a reputation under your name. And that can be based on the amount of advertising you've done in those 6 years, for example. The consumer recognition within the marketplace, if you were to mention your name, how many consumers will recognise it as you compared to the other competitor. Things like that we need to take into account. That's where it gets very expensive because you'll need to pay a lawyer to do all of that for you. Compared to the application fee of a trademark, it's much less of a headache to do it from day one. But it certainly does happen, and we'll get on to more of that later before you all fall asleep with me droning on. But yeah, Richard, we're still going around?
Yeah, basically, obviously, Richard Locke, and just interestingly, I've just in the process of using Ryan's services for the Business Golf Network, and we've decided to trademark the logo, I hope I get this right, logo, but because it's Business Golf Network, they're actually words which can't be trademarked.
Because they're too descriptive.
They're too descriptive, so therefore we've had to take the logo and the words, and we're also taking our strap line to combine it within the whole, so we can trademark that, and then hopefully in the future, if there's any issues, we've actually also encompassed the words as well.
That's right. And also with your future plan as well, you want to open this up across the UK. Your strategy, this is certainly going to help your strategy because this is hopefully going to get a lot of exposure, and you may well in the future decide to almost develop a franchise model for this in different territories, and that's where part of that agreement would be a license to use that branding in return for obviously a royalty fee or a monthly or an annual fee. So that's where controlling it comes in. But also if you watch Dragon's Den, I don't know whether you ever remember, there was the previous episode, not the previous episode, sorry, the previous series, there was two young lads that went into the den and they had a onesie business. And that onesie business was called Young Ones, but on the arm they had YO on the arm. And Peter Jones straight away said, right, I love the business, but I spot a massive problem here. That logo you've got on your arm is registered worldwide as a trademark by Yo Sushi. You won't get around that trademark, and for that reason I'm out. Because he appreciated the massive risk of actually infringing somebody else's rights. And taking that from every other business's perspective, investors, due diligence, they look at the IP, how have you secured it? What's the value of it? Because you can value the goodwill in your name as well. That's often part of the negotiations. If you've got trademarks as proof of that, it's certainly going to help you. And that's one thing that an investor will certainly look at, or a potential buyer of your business. So yeah. But yeah, and David?
Yes. Apart from doing this, running the South East Business Golf Network, I also work with companies doing their marketing, and I've just started working with people in Flow who do profile, and there's some interesting things there on intellectual property in terms of their courses and workshops that they run. So,
because they'll have trade secrets, know-how, methodologies. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Well, questions. I think otherwise I'll probably be here all evening talking. I don't want to keep you too much. So, if you think of any questions, note them down, and I'll certainly come to them at the end. And I'll try and be as thorough as possible. But my card is in each of the folders as well, if you do need to contact me. But am I okay to start?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, so this talk, what I'm going to be talking to you about is, as you can see, a story about shoes and intellectual property. And you're probably thinking, why on earth is he going to be talking to me about shoes today? Well, this man here is Mario Poligato. He was born in 1952 in Italy, in a region called Treviso. Now, Treviso, for the Prosecco drinkers in the room, is the region that Prosecco originated from. And his family owned quite a prominent vineyard at the time. And when he was born, his mother and father decided that he would follow suit and actually go into the family business, selling wine. And that's exactly what he did. Fast forward 40 or so years later, he's still in the business, selling wine, and it wasn't until he actually went away on holiday to Reno in California, where he actually went to a wine conference. And at the wine conference in Reno, California, he decided actually he didn't quite enjoy what he was doing. He was doing it, he fell into the business, it was quite lucrative, but he wasn't quite enjoying it. So he decided that he would take an extra week away on holiday to explore the Nevada desert, as you see there. Now, whilst he was out in the Nevada desert, he went for a run. And as he was jogging, one thing he noticed when he was out there was his feet were absolutely sweltering. He didn't have any socks on, took his socks off, threw them over his shoulder, thought, right, I'll try running without socks. And of course, as we all know, that builds up sweat even more. So he got his Swiss Army knife out of his bag and he cut his own holes in the trainers because it was that intolerable. He couldn't run barefoot because obviously, as you can see with the terrain, very, very rough and bumpy. And of course, it was at that moment that he spotted the opportunity. Straight away, when he cut those holes in his trainers, he thought, hang on a minute, why am I having to cut holes in the trainers here? Why isn't there a pair of shoes out there that's not only breathable, but waterproof as well? So when I go out for runs, it's actually going to provide a good airflow through to my feet, but also if it rains, it's going to stop the water from coming in. Because the problem he had with his current shoes, as you can see, is toes sticking out the edge, probably not that comfortable, and probably not that ideal to wear in public, shall we say. So you wouldn't really want to be seen running along in those, would you? So he spotted the opportunity, and this was the solution. He came up with an idea. The idea was to combine, as mentioned, the possibility of having a shoe which provides obviously good ventilation, but also completely waterproof, but also fashionable as well. He wanted to combine that, and this was his solution. So with his idea, he needed to protect that. He needed to stop other people from using it, because at the time he thought, this is really exciting, it's ingenious. It was 1995 at the time that he came up with this idea. So he thought, right, what can I do to actually stop other people from copying my idea? Straight away he applied to get a patent for his idea, to protect it, to give him the legal exclusivity to stop other people from using it. So he applied for a patent. Now, in order to get that patent, he needed to be able to demonstrate that firstly, his idea was new. So it's completely novel, nobody else had thought of it, and that was a big check in the box. It was a complete new idea. The second part was it had to actually be an inventive step. So it couldn't be something that was too obvious to everyone else out there. Anyone could have thought of it. It actually had to show some kind of solution to a real present problem. And it ticked that box as well. The third point, it's actually got to be capable of being made. It can't just be an idea or a hypothesis. It actually has to be capable of being produced and actually sold onto the market. And again, with this type of product, very easy to mass produce that. So he ticks all three boxes. Nothing out there, really inventive, and he could produce it. So that was a tick in the box. Now, what did he get in return for that? He secured a 20-year monopoly right on that. So he had 20 years from the date that it was granted to actually make or break it, basically. So, with that in mind, he did that across 100 companies. Not companies, sorry, 100 countries. So immediately, he was now doing quite well in respect to the patent. He had it granted in 100 countries, but the problem was, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The problem was actually getting into the into the other markets with regards to approaching other companies to actually sell these shoes. So that was his first problem, which I'll come to in a minute. But the second thing he needed to do was he needed to protect his name, because he came up with a good brand name to actually start selling these products under, to actually differentiate his goods and services from the rest of the market. So the name that he came up with was Geox, which when you break it down, the GE stands for geographic, and the OX stands for oxygen. You combine the two together, and of course, that's where he came up with the name with regards to it explaining his product, but in a very distinctive way. It's a made-up word. Now, when looking at the requirements for a registered trademark, the first requirement is it can't be too descriptive of what you're actually selling. So, looking at Richard's example earlier, you can't have, for example, if you're a bakery and you want to call it Tasty Cakes, you can't get a monopoly right on that. You can't prevent other people from calling their businesses Tasty Cakes. That would be incredibly unfair. However, what you can do is if you come up with a distinctive word that doesn't describe your goods and services, like Google, eBay, Amazon, great, very distinctive, it's not describing the goods or services that you're offering. So that's the one tick in the box. Second part is it's got to be distinctive. So in other words, it can't be in common use in your industry. So if you're a plumber and you want to call your plumbing business watertight plumbing, that's a term that everybody uses in the industry to describe the quality of the product or the service. So again, you can't get a monopoly right on that. Geox, very distinctive. So again, it's not in common use in his industry. So he had 2 ticks in the boxes. The third point, it can't be the same or identical to somebody else's trademark that's already registered. He did his searches across the international trademark registers and he identified that there was nobody else out there at the moment that had that particular name. So he was clear to go ahead and register his trademark. In return for registering his trademark, he got a renewable right, which lasts every 10 years and you renew it every 10 years. So that right gives you the legal exclusivity to prevent other people from using your name without permission. He also had the ability to license it and actually assign it to others if need be, but he mainly licensed it and he also used it to protect the brand and enforce it against others. And you're probably wondering, what's the use of the symbols here? You've got an R symbol and a TM symbol. Both carry a different meaning. The TM symbol stands for trademark, although you could say totally meaningless because actually it means that it's an unregistered trademark and you've got no registered trademark rights to it. So everyone in the room right now can place the TM symbol after their name. That's absolutely fine. The R symbol, on the other hand, actually stands for registered trademark. And it's only once you've actually got a registered trademark, it's only then that you can use that symbol. So that's the difference between the 2 symbols at the moment. Now you'll probably see here, in terms of the types of things you can trademark plain text wording, which gives you the widest possible rights, because it doesn't matter how many times he changes his logo, he's got protection over that. But again, the logo is capable of being protected if you've got quite a descriptive word. So that still does secure you some element of trademark rights there. And this is exactly what he did as well. He trademarked a logo which contained his slogan, "The shoe that breathes." So he secured his name and he secured his slogan. The problem that he had was he was firstly 45 years old. He'd been developing his product for 3 years, spent an absolute fortune on protecting the name, getting the patents in 100 different countries. He started approaching, as I mentioned earlier, all of the big shoe manufacturers and all of the big shoe retailers. He approached each of them and said, "I've got a fantastic product. Here's the patent, here's the trademark, here's the development, here's my plan. Do you want to buy it off me? I know it's going to work." None of them believed in him at all. Not one of them. He was so confident